Recapping night one of the NFL draft, round one in the books. 32 picks made. We are going to break down the important ones. We had a few trades today. We had 2 quarterbacks get drafted. We had 2 running backs get drafted. And I'll tell you this, over the last 10 seasons, there have been 13 running backs drafted in the first round, not including Travis Etienne, who missed his rookie season. 11 of those 13 running backs averaged 15 and a half or more touches per game. Do you think Omarion Hampton is going to get 15 and a half or more touches per game with the Chargers, Dave Richard?
I think he will average right around that by the time we get to the end of the year, but it could be a little bit tough to expect that first couple of weeks of the season. Maybe they'd ease him in a little bit. They have no reason to rush him and put him on the field unless it's just clear as day in training camp that he's the better runner than Najee Harris, and you can't rule that out. So that's one of there really weren't a lot of round one picks that I was really excited about for fantasy. Kind of a bummer where some of these guys that we loved ended up going to.
Well, we got an email of the day, and Jamie Eisenberg, who was just on CBS Sports HQ, which is a great source for NFL draft content and all the other sports that you're following. At one point today, I had TV on a basketball game, 1 laptop on a hockey game, 1 laptop on the NFL draft. So it was a lot of fun. This is why you need CBS Sports HQ to keep you up to date on everything. We got an email of the day at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. That's the letter I, fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. This one's from Sean. Said, well, that was a terrible mock draft. No way Tampa takes Egbuka tomorrow, and the Broncos passing on Hampton so the division rival can take him when they already have the same guy in Najee. Worst mock draft ever. Can't wait for the real deal tomorrow. Yeah, it was kind of a silly draft. Anyway, welcome, Jamie.
Hello, boys.
All right, we're going to get big fantasy winners and big fantasy losers from you guys. Let's start with some winners, and these can be rookies or NFL veterans. Jamie, who jumps out to you as a fantasy winner?
I mean, obviously, Ashton Jeanty. You look at the landing spot was great. Love the setup for him. This is one of the teams we talked about as, he would be a winner going there. Runway is clear for him to not have to share touches. You know what Pete Carroll's history is with featured running backs. So the setup is perfect. The player hopefully will be perfect. Great for him. You want me to keep going with other winners?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Trevor Lawrence, obviously getting Travis Hunter, looking at the setup there for him. I like the fact that he's going to spend at least the majority of his time on offense. So it's a great situation for him. And then I think just, piggybacking off the trade there, this is great for Jerry Jeudy. It's great for David Njoku. We thought that Hunter was going to go there. With the way Joe Flacco played in 2023 in the system and how he aired the ball out and hoping to do the same thing, with what we saw from Jeudy last year and obviously what he did with Njoku in that season. So I think it's a win for both of those guys. Other winners that stand out. I mean, obviously the quarterbacks that got receivers, I think they all win. Jordan Love getting a game breaker and Matthew Golden. Obviously Bryce Young getting another playmaker and Tetairoa McMillan. Baker Mayfield, my God. I mean, he's got as good a receiving core as anybody in the league right now. I mean, this is just, the rich getting richer. It gives them the, assuming he's the guy for the next, 4 or 5 years, which I doubt that they would like to change things based on the way that he's played. Hopefully he stays healthy and continues to produce like this. I mean, Baker goes from throwing to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin to Godwin bridging the gap and still having Jalen McMillan and now Egbuka. Like this is fantasy heaven for the Bucs and this receiving core. It's a little bit of a headache this year, but obviously from a quarterback standpoint, it's fantastic.
Dave, you want to add anything to winners?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, I think there were some players that I was anticipating being losers today. Jamie mentioned the Browns guys, Jeudy and Njoku. I'd say Garrett Wilson. I was also anticipating maybe him having to share targets on a team that's going to be pretty low in pass attempts to begin with the tight end, with Loveland or Warren, but they went with Membu instead. They take an offensive tackle. I thought about something Heath said, because there was a comment in our chat. We got a very active chat right now. I appreciate that. It's midnight right now, Eastern. Comment in our chat, if I could just find it. Sorry, it said something like the only destination I really liked was Jeanty, I think. Oh, yeah, here we go. It's from Rhonda. The only landing spot I love thus far is Jeanty's for fantasy football purposes, of course. I poo-pooed something Heath said a little bit on Wednesday's show. God, it feels like it's been 4 days ago, but it was just yesterday, where he thought Green Bay would be a good spot for a wide receiver. I don't know if he specifically said Matthew Golden, actually. I could look.
No, he had Egbuka.
I kind of see where he's coming from. I said, well, look, they spread the ball around so much. They haven't had a 100-target guy, I don't think, in 2 years. Nobody even had 80 targets last year. But this is always a good offense. I think LaFleur is a really good coach. And at least Matthew Golden's not going to be wasting away on some crappy offense. And maybe he just has the opportunity to be better than everyone else. And Christian Watson's going to miss some time. So I could see that. So at first I didn't love it, but I'm thinking about it, at least he's got an opportunity. If he is as good as some people think he is, I think he can rise above it and thrive. Maybe as early as late in his rookie season. Matthew Golden going to the Packers. Do you like Golden or McMillan better right now for 2025? McMillan to the Panthers, Golden to the Packers.
I'll take McMillan, because I think that there's a much faster path for him to lead that team in targets from game to game. You don't spend a top 10 pick on that guy and say, well, we need to spread it around between him and Adam Thielen and Xavier Legette. He's actually the perfect type of receiver that I would want to have with Bryce Young, because Bryce Young, we know about the size limitations, and he's got a target now who is literally always open because he's so tall. He's physical enough, and he can leap for those 50-50 balls. And I would imagine that he's going to have a shot to get north of 7 targets per game. So I would have McMillan over Golden, but I do see what you see with Golden. They raved about his character at Texas and at Houston. I did a lot of research on him, and he was somebody that coaches talked about, always wanted to get better, always wanted to work with his quarterbacks, really seemed focused on just trying to improve his game. And so I think he'll be receptive to anything that Matt LaFleur and the Packers coaching staff puts in front of him. And that coaching staff, really until the last couple of years, man, they did a decent job cultivating talent. One of the more recent guys they did have success with and turn into a starter was Alan Lazard. And maybe some of that was Aaron Rodgers kind of forcing it. And maybe they were just running out of guys. You remember when Lazard found his opportunities, they couldn't find a number 2 receiver. But Lazard, who went undrafted, ended up being that guy. This is who's replacing Christian Watson. This is someone who could be a do-it-all receiver for them. I think as far as their healthy receivers go, the only guy that they have that is that right now is Dobbs. So there's a track for him to play, and I agree with you, Adam. I think the second half of the year, we could see Golden play well and be a very good fantasy. Very good. A good enough to start as like a number 3 receiver type fantasy option. That's probably what he could be.
So I think it's going to come down to a couple things. Will they throw the ball more? That's a big part of this, because what we saw last year was they didn't. They regressed from what looked like, some potential stars in 2023 when Jaden Reed was, I know doing some things carrying the ball, but they were, much more effective throwing the ball that season. And even Christian Watson was having some good plays. If we get Christian Watson back at some point in the latter half of the season, then it becomes very messy, because he'll get on the field in some capacity, and it's going to be, I think, a little bit of a problem. But I think also, you're looking at it, and this kind of goes to Dave's point, but I'll take the other side of it, about them cultivating talent. Sometimes they've done that, which I think you can make the case. Lazard, maybe Romeo Dobbs. They didn't really do it with Christian Watson, obviously, because, whether it was health or whatever, not getting the best out of him. I think it's going to see, is Dobbs just a guy? Is Dontavian Wicks just a guy?
Yes.
Is Jaden Reed, I don't want to say just a guy, but, if those guys aren't potential big-time playmakers, and Golden is, then he'll command targets and he'll get all the production that we look for. If they're all just kind of good players, and I know Golden's draft capital doesn't say that, but if they're all just good players, and Dave brought this up, I think it was Dave when we were, breaking down the wide receivers prior to the draft about, he didn't really come on until the end of his
last 10 games.
And is that a byproduct of just a player getting it, or is that a byproduct of, just maybe some things working in his favor? It's hard to, see, but clearly he worked himself into a position to get drafted this high, and a lot of people think he was the best receiver in this class. So if all that talent shows, then he's going to command the football. If that talent doesn't show, then we're probably talking about another guy that's maybe hovering around 100 targets and just part of the, another cog in the wheel of this Green Bay receiving corps. So it can go either way. I just think fantasy wise, he's going to be a little disappointing by comparison to what McMillan could be in his role with the Panthers, to what Hunter could be in his role with the Jaguars, and not this year, but eventually what Egbuka's role could be with the Bucs.
Yeah, McMillan. I'm pretty pumped for McMillan, honestly. Deontay Johnson, he scored 19.8 or more PPR fantasy points in 3 of 5 games with Andy Dalton. Adam Thielen in his last 7 games after returning from injury. Adam Thielen was on pace for 97 catches, 1,229 yards, 10 touchdowns on 121 targets in his last 7 games. I think McMillan could be pretty damn good. All right, so I want to get your thoughts on like ranking. I guess we'll do every position here. You can rank the quarterbacks. Cam Ward will be 1, Dart will be 2. But we'll just get your thoughts. We'll go position by position. But first, how about some fantasy losers? I think ranking the wide receivers will be really interesting. I think you could definitely make a case for McMillan over Hunter. I wonder where people are on that. I'm going to put a poll up right now. Because I think even though we kind of expect Hunter to play wide receiver, we don't know what that means exactly. We don't know how much he's going to be on the field. So we'll take the temperature of Twitter and see what people say. Dave, any fantasy? Yeah, who's a big loser? You're a big loser, Davis. You got to wait because we got to take a commercial break. So you think about your fantasy losers. We'll be right back after this. Okay, loser. What do you got for us? Fantasy losers after day 1.
I was hoping that Travis Hunter would go to a team where he'd be the unquestioned number 1 alpha wide receiver, the type of guy that could command 9 to 10 targets per game. Could he lead that team in targets this year? If we're playing the odds game, I would probably lean a little bit against it. I think it'll be close, but that's a problem. So I love that he went to Jacksonville. I'm hoping that Jacksonville just becomes one of these teams that just airs it out every single week. Their defense can't stop anybody. Their run game isn't very good. It's just going to be Trevor Lawrence throwing it all over the place. And these 2 receivers do get in that neighborhood of 7.5 to 8 targets per game, and they can be okay. But the upside case for Hunter, and to a lesser degree, Brian Thomas Jr., kind of went out the window. So I think those guys are very small losers. I think both tight ends are losers. I think Colston, Loveland, and Tyler Warren going to Chicago and Indy, respectively. Loveland being the first tight end off the board. I get it. Ben Johnson sees the next Sam Laporta and Colston Loveland. That sounds really good for fantasy, but there's a lot of sharing that has to be done. Not only is it DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, but Cole Kmet is still there, and Kmet's still going to play a decent amount of the time, and he could take some touchdowns. But that's another team that if they don't do enough to improve their run game, they're going to throw it all over the place. And so maybe that'll be a little bit of a help to Loveland, but he'd still probably live around 6 targets per game. I am hoping that Warren can get 6 targets per game, but goodness gracious, the quarterback situation in Indy, we knew it wasn't going to be good to begin with. Now he's going to be another short area target in an offense that's got Michael Pittman, that's got Josh Downs. I love the talent. I love Warren. I'm probably going to be the guy that takes Tyler Warren in every single draft this year, even though he went to Indianapolis. But I do worry about not only how many targets is he going to get at him, but how many touchdowns is he going to get? We know what happens when the Colts get inside the 5. Maybe he takes a couple of rushing touchdowns away from those quarterbacks there. He did that. He scored, 3 rushing touchdowns last year?
Can I give you a stat real quick, Dave?
Give me a stat. Make me feel better about these guys.
No, that's not what the stat is. Daniel Jones in his career has 70 touchdown passes in 70 games. Anthony Richardson in his career, I think he has 11 touchdown passes in something like 15 games. So together, those guys are averaging for their careers about 1 touchdown per game. We need to see a leap in passing from Anthony Richardson. I don't know if we're going to see that from Daniel Jones.
So the volume won't be there, and just the touchdowns won't be there. It's a bad combo.
And again, this was another year where I think, let's see, let me give you the exact stat. We have had 3 tight ends in the last 9 seasons that have finished top 5 at the position and have not been first or second on their team in targets. So is Colston Loveland going to be first or second on his team in targets? I don't think so. Is Tyler Warren? Maybe. But why does that matter? Well, okay, he could be tight end 6, tight end 7. Honestly, that's not that good of a player. Tight end 6, tight end 7 is really, you're talking like 750 yards and 5 touchdowns will probably get you to tight end 6 or tight end 7. So you if you're going to draft a tight end who's going to have a major impact, he's got to be a top 5 tight end, and he has to be first or second on his team in targets to do it almost every single year. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Tight end 7 last year on a per game basis was Travis Kelce. He averaged 12.2 PPR points per game.
I'm not doing per game. I'm doing overall, because when you talk about being first,
overall it was Zach Ertz. He averaged 10.4 PPR points per game.
Exactly. You're talking about a huge impact player.
So I know Bears fans like my son Ryan. He's over the moon that they got Colston Loveland, and maybe if Odunze doesn't click, maybe that's the path that it takes for Loveland to be a tight end monster in Chicago. But I don't love it, and I worry about the touchdowns for Warren. I still love the talent for Warren, but those are some losers right off the bat. Egbuka is probably going to be a loser in 2025. I get why the Bucs took him.
I hated that. That was terrible.
I know, but Mike Evans is in a contract year again, and it might be his last year. Who knows? It could almost certainly be his last year in Tampa. And so Egbuka is a pick for the future for the Buccaneers.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, I'm going to come up with a segment right now. It's called Big Important Fantasy Questions. Is Ashton Jeanty a round 1 pick?
Yes.
Yes. Especially in non-PPR.
He's my 4th running back.
Would you take I think Malik Neighbors is a little bit of a loser tonight. Would you take Jeanty or Neighbors in PPR?
Jeanty.
I currently have Neighbors.
Why do I think he's a loser? For those of you who are not asking, I'll tell you anyway. Because if they struggle, then it makes sense for them to go to Dart. And I don't want them to go to Dart. I want them to go to James.
Look what he did last year with the crappy quarterback.
Wasn't that good? It wasn't that good.
Oh, yeah, he was terrible.
No, he got off to a great start.
He was no Zach Ertz.
Huge week 18, but go ahead and look at he had a really long stretch with DeVito and Locke.
He was a rookie wide receiver and did that.
Hey, I'm just saying I would take him. I would take Jeanty ahead of him. I'm not saying I think he's garbage.
Oh, I agree. But I mean, you said he's a loser because of the quarterback.
I do think he's a little bit of a loser because they're going to struggle probably. And then I was hoping they go to Jameis. Jameis would be great for him. They struggle. They go to Dart now. So that's a downgrade probably from Wilson.
They may not go to Dart.
Why wouldn't they? You got to coach. If they're
they should, but they're
struggling, Dable's getting fired.
If they don't think he's ready.
If they're struggling, they're going to Jaxson Dart because Dable's going to get fired, right? So you might as well throw this guy out there, see if he can save your job. So I think you got to be thinking about this. You're thinking about Malik Neighbors versus Brian Thomas Jr. Is Thomas Jr.
Well, I mean, if you're going to make the case that Neighbors is a loser because of the quarterback situation, you have to make a case that Thomas lost because of the addition of Travis Hunter.
I think you could make that case. I would say, and I've gone through this, I have a whole list of what happens to veteran pass catchers when they add rookie wide receivers. The main takeaway is that it does not affect great receivers. It can really affect, the Christian Kirks of the world. But the Brian Thomases probably shouldn't be affected. Do you think he's a loser? And who would you take now?
No, I don't. But I'm just saying, if you're making the case that Malik Neighbors is a loser because of a first-round quarterback coming in who they may think is great. I mean, look, they traded back into the first round to get him, and they're not going to rush him to be the starter. I don't know. I don't think Malik Neighbors is a loser tonight.
A little bit.
No, dude, it was Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito.
You're misinterpreting. You're misinterpreting. It's not compared to what he had last year. It's compared to the Jameis Winston effect.
So you're saying that had Winston been the guy to take over, he would have been a tremendous winner.
Exactly.
I got you.
That's what I'm saying.
But Adam, who drafts a wide receiver because who the backup quarterback is?
Well, in this particular situation, I think it's pretty realistic that you're going to see a backup quarterback at somebody. But anyway, let's move on. Sorry. Next big important fantasy question. Where are you guys? Tetairoa McMillan or Travis Hunter?
We should draft all the Falcons receivers because they've got Kirk Cousins there too, right? What is it?
Penix
I currently have, in just what I did tonight,
Cousins is the
Hunter like 1 or 2 spots ahead of McMillan. But this is going to be one that's kind of contingent on what happens in camp and where they're playing Hunter. So if he's going to spend too much time on defense, then I'll be McMillan. I just think that with Cohen and the new system in Jacksonville, if Trevor Lawrence can finally live up to his potential, this offense could be amazing.
Yeah,
Yep.
hell yeah.
Yep. And
close on
those
Twitter.
targets will get funneled to those two guys. So 7.5 targets per game is what you should shoot for. But I think McMillan can get that. And I don't think there's much of a touchdown issue in Carolina that could hurt McMillan compared to what's in Jacksonville between Thomas and Hunter.
I also think, to
Sorry.
go back to the winners question, just while we're on Jacksonville, obviously Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby with the trade.
For now, yeah.
Okay, when are you drafting Omarion Hampton? That's my
Round
next big question.
5. And I would
Let's
take him ahead of Najee Harris.
I'm taking him ahead of Najee too. Round 5 for me, 50th overall.
Oh, that really feels like the kind of pick that could win you your league. If you're
Or lose it for you.
well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think of I want to say it was Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, right? Is that the duo? We were waiting and waiting for Javonte to take over, and he never did, except that one game against the Chiefs where he had a huge game. Am I remembering this correctly? And he never got the job that we thought he was going to eventually get. It happens sometimes, and but Hampton definitely has a. If you make the fantasy playoffs, he might be the guy who wins it for you if he just takes over.
Look, you hope it's not Walker and Charbonnet, right?
Well, but people weren't drafting Charbonnet.
No, but still, coming off of his rookie season and they draft Charbonnet, it was like, what? Why?
Yeah, it was so strange. How much? Aaron is asking, how much did Najee get paid? It's a 1-year, $5.3 million deal.
No, I think it was 9.5.
That's what I thought originally, but then I saw today 5.3. So I was looking into that because I wrote in my notes back in March 9.5. I think it's 5.3.
I'll look it up right now. As long as it's not crazy money, it's 5.25. There might be some incentives. $4 million in incentives available. So if he has a big year, it's $9.25 million. If he gets Hamptoned, it's $5.25 million, and he's on another team next year.
The thing that is scary about Najee, and it was kind of the problem for Jaylen Warren, he never gets hurt, and he doesn't fumble. He's got 3 fumbles in his career, and he's never missed a game. So, as long as he's doing the things that coaches like, he'll stay relevant, and maybe too relevant for what Hampton's upside is. But, I think just given the fact that this is the guy that they targeted, they had other needs. We know how deep this running back class is. They could have gotten somebody later in the draft. This guy's a potential superstar, So, yeah. And they used 2 backs last year, and I think people forget that because Dobbins was so good. They were using Gus Edwards too.
And they also threw to Dobbins, and that's one thing that Hampton should be able to do better than Najee is make plays in the passing game. Hampton had 38 catches in 12 games, but the scouting reports, everyone seems to agree this guy can be a factor in the passing game. Also, he did have fumble problems, Hampton, at one point in his career, but he only fumbled once in 2024. It was on a reception. So he did not have a single fumble on a carry last year, whereas Ashton Jeanty had 4 of those, by the way. Let me see if I can. I had a Twitter poll about this, by the way. Omarion Hampton, when are you drafting him? Rounds 1 through 3 got 14%. Rounds 4 through 6 got 46%. Rounds 7 through 9, 32%. Round 10 or later, 8%. And then, all right, here's one that I put on Twitter.
How about this fun fact? Hampton was offered by Michigan. One of his first offers was from Michigan.
Oh,
so he's been on Harbaugh's radar for a long time. He finally got him.
I like that. All right, what kind of impact will Colston Loveland have on DJ Moore and Roma Dunze's fantasy value? Big impact. I wanted to put deep impact there. I didn't think people would get it. Medium impact, little impact, or Armageddon. No, just kidding. Keep making it. They were the same movie. Big impact, medium impact, little impact, or bad only for Odunze. What do you guys say? What kind of impact will Colston Loveland have on Moore and Odunze?
Little impact.
Yeah, I think I'd lean that way.
That's what Twitter said. 56%. 32% said medium impact. Almost nobody said either a big impact or bad only for Odunze. It's an interesting one. Yeah, who do you guys like better this year? Warren with the Colts or Loveland with the Bears?
Loveland with the Bears.
I'm going to take Warren with the Colts, but I'm worried about the opportunities for both of them, so I'll just take the tight end that I think is a little more talented and might have a little bit of a better path to being the number 2 target getter on his team.
Yeah. So are they going to crack your top 12?
I put Loveland at 11 and Warren at 12.
Oh, fun. Isn't it interesting?
They're going to be real close. Warren might be like 11 for me.
Isn't it interesting how we view rookie tight ends now compared to a few years ago? I would say before Kyle Pitts, you didn't even give it a thought that these guys could be good for fantasy.
Right.
And now we've had Pitts, Laporta. Like, people forget Pitts had set the rookie record at the time for receiving yards. And then Laporta was really good, and then Bowers blew them away.
Bears have drafted 3 first-round tight ends in their history. One was the first guy to ever get 1,000 yards.
Ditka.
Mike Ditka, 1961, I believe. Second one is arguably the best play-by-play guy on TV right now.
Greg Olson.
Wait
a minute.
Oh, he's the color
first round pick.
He was.
Greg Olson was a first rounder?
Yeah, I think so. And the other was
color analysis.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, all right.
And now Loveland.
Did they not take Komet in the first round? When did they take
31st overall? Yes, he was.
They did not take Komet in the first round.
All right. Do I have any other big, stupid fantasy questions that need to be answered? Do you guys want to take one? Let's see. McMillan, Egbuka, Golden.
I think we don't usually come out of round 1 with the rookie draft is set, because we know round 2 is going to determine our running back.
Right. Yeah.
Like, there's going to be some big time movement tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
With where all these running backs go, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh,
because like Hampton right now feels like he's in a good spot, especially if you're looking long term, right? Because he could be good as a rookie, he could be amazing, 2026 and beyond. Like, once he takes over this backfield completely. But like, if Henderson goes to the Broncos, let's just say, or ends up on a team like that, where there's a clear path to the Cowboys, one of those teams that we've been talking about, Bears go and get somebody. Like, we could have the second pick in rookie drafts tomorrow. We could have the third pick in rookie drafts tomorrow. Judkins could end up in a great spot as well. It might be better than Hampton in some people's minds. So it's going to be really fun to see how this all shakes out.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Could Burden end up somewhere that's going to make you excited? I don't think you could take him over Hunter or McMillan at this point.
There were only 2 picks I was rooting for. One was, please just take Carter and don't screw up, idiots, at number 3, and they didn't. And the other one was Luther Burden to the Bills. Then the Bills were on the clock. I was like, please take Burden, please take Burden, please take Burden, please, and they didn't.
Take us through your emotions when you saw that the trade happened.
Well, someone texted me and said, is it going to be Sanders? And I said, I don't think so. I think fart. And then I changed it because it auto-corrected to fart. I tried to type Dart. And I think that was a sign. That was basically how I feel about this pick. I think it's so stupid. None of these quarterbacks other than Ward should have been first-round picks. Trading up to 25 is aggressive, right? I mean, I understand, for people who don't know, when you draft someone in the first round, they're on a 4-year contract, and the team has a 5th-year option. So you can keep that player for a 5th year. You draft someone in any other round, it's just a 4-year contract. So there's incentive. We saw with Lamar Jackson, the Ravens traded into the very end of round 1. They drafted Lamar Jackson. You get that extra 5th year. That there's incentive to be in the first round if you really like a player. But 25th was pretty high. They didn't trade to 30, 31, or 32. They better feel pretty confident that someone was going to take Jaxson Dart. I'm sort of getting the feeling, guys, I don't know how you feel about it, and the time will tell. I feel like this is going to be one of the worst NFL drafts. Like, we're just going to look at this draft. It's going to be just crap. So I don't know that anyone was really that good at that point, or that the Giants would have the 34th pick. I don't know that at 30. Yeah, 4th. I don't know that anyone was really going to be that good, but I hate the pick. I hate that they traded up. I hate that they gave up 3 picks, a second and 2/3 for Jaxson Dart. I don't get it, with any of these quarterbacks. So I was pretty disappointed, but honestly, I love Abdul Carter, so I'm not so disappointed with the night.
Were you at least satisfied knowing that you didn't give up what the Falcons gave up to move back into round 1 or what the Jaguars gave up to get to number 2?
The Falcons are so that was terrible to give up a first round pick next year to get the 26th pick in the draft, and they also gave up a second round pick.
Correct.
They got a third rounder back, so they gave up a second rounder, a 2026 first rounder, and a 7th for pick 26 and a third round pick. I didn't necessarily think the Jaguars overpaid. They did give up a lot, including next year's first round pick. I'm curious to see what you guys thought. But in a draft where it's arguable that there were only 2 elite players, 3 if you want to include Jeanty, they went and got Hunter. And I just think he's going to be incredible. So, I'll tell you, NFL Network had an interesting stat. It was the first time that a team traded up for a top 2 pick and didn't select a quarterback since the Rams in 1997. Do you know who they picked? Picked a Hall of Famer.
1977?
97. I'm sorry.
97.
Hall of Famer.
Pace was 96, I think.
You got it. It was Pace.
Dave beat me.
Orlando Pace, yeah.
I thought Pace was the year before, but you're right. He wasn't. It was 97.
How cold do you think Thomas keeps in his house?
Thomas is in South Florida in a beanie, just like, and a sweatshirt. And he's got super long hair. He must be so hot. All right, so the trade was the Jaguars got the 2nd pick and a 4th round pick and a 6th round pick for the 5th overall pick, which Cleveland turned into Mason Graham, a 2nd round pick, which is 36th overall, and a 4th round pick and next year's first. Do you think, Dave, you think they overpaid?
I do. And I think Cleveland was smart about it. And we'll see how smart they are, because now they have 2 first rounders in a draft next year that's going to have better quarterbacks than this year's draft. And I almost was hoping that they would trade down again and collect another first. And then they've got all the ammo to go up and get whoever they want in the 2026 draft. So maybe that's what they're going for. I think that is going to be what they're going for if they pass on Shedeur Sanders with both of their early second rounders on Friday.
I mean, look, if Hunter's a Hall of Famer, then it's worth it.
Yeah, I would even say if the Jaguars are picking 20th or later next year, it's probably worth it, right?
Sure.
Very much dependent on how.
Was that pick enough to put them in the driver's seat in the AFC South?
It's not going to take much.
Texas has a really good defense potentially. So
right.
let's
knocking off Houston is not going to be easy for them to do. The other 2 teams, I think
But
they
it's
can.
not that big of an ask, though. I mean,
I agree, but okay. If you win the division, you've got the home playoff game. You're in the dance. I think we would look at their roster compared to the Buffaloes, Baltimores, and Kansas Cities and laugh. I don't think Jacksonville can compete with them. But yeah, if that first rounder next year is at 20, they make the playoffs, maybe they win a game and then they bow out. Okay, then it's a better deal. But if they stink again,
it comes down to
terrible deal.
If Trevor Lawrence is good, they're going to be a good team. They may not be a great team, they'll be a good team. And so you just made Trevor Lawrence better today. And so if he is as good as advertised, Travis Hunter, and maybe makes a couple plays on defense as well, assuming he spends most of his time offensively, then you did what you had to do. And look, it's, as we know, and you said it best, Adam, this is a draft that is really starving for talent. And the Browns knew that. The Browns knew that they had really one of the 2 golden tickets, 3 if you want to say Cam Ward at the top, but 2 golden tickets with Carter and Hunter sitting there at 2 and 3. And so you want him, come get him, come pay for him. And the Jaguars did.
All right, the Jaguars no longer have a 2nd round pick, so keep that in mind. But they still have 2 picks in the top 88. They have the 70th pick and the 88th pick. Imagine if they take a running back that we like in the 3rd round with one of those 2 picks, and then we're just looking at Liam Cohen dealing with Lawrence, Hunter, Thomas, and ETN. Like, they could be really good, but their offensive line was awful last year, awful.
Right.
So that's still a problem.
They're gonna have to work around that. But the thing that I'm enjoying when I think about the Jaguars is last year Liam Cohen did a great job when Evans and Godwin were healthy. Their numbers were amazing. When one of them was off the field, they still had decent numbers from somebody. And then later on in the year, when it was Evans and McMillan, We were starting both those guys. So he can make this work. He can put something together where these two receivers can both put up good numbers. I'm just worried about them, one or both of them, being so good that they're going to end up being like top 10 fantasy wide receivers. I'm nervous about that. I don't know if we can call them that.
Wait a second. I'm sorry. All right. We got to come back to that. Let's take another break and come back to what Dave's just said about, you're talking about the Jaguars receivers?
Yeah.
All right. Let's
being top 10. Why?
No, let's just talk about that, because if people don't think Brian Thomas is a top 10 receiver, that's pretty big news, I'd say. All right, we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
What's he like? The happy-faced killer?
You mean my dad? Be glad you never have to know.
You think that you're so much better than me.
You're just like your old man.
I'm not like you at all.
All right, welcome back. So we're talking about Brian Thomas. What we're going to do now, we'll finish up this conversation about Brian Thomas Jr. with Travis Hunter going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Will he be a top 10 wide receiver? And then we're going to go through all of the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and offensive linemen that were picked today, and just get quick reaction from Dave and Jamie on all of them. So Brian Thomas, let's see, where did he finish last year? He was fifth overall, but 14th per game in full PPR, 4th overall, and 11th per game in non-PPR. Almost 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns in 17 games.
His last 6 games were just insane.
Well, his last 9 games without Christian Kirk. As soon as Christian Kirk went out, he was on pace for 159 targets, 1,339 yards, 9 touchdowns, over 100 catches.
What was his target pace?
Games, 159 targets in those 9 games. But then the last 4 games were without Kirk and Ingram, and he all of a sudden goes to a 204 target pace and 1,800 yards, 17 touchdown pace. Yes. So I do think that was interesting that really he had a very small sample size, Brian Thomas Jr., of Kirk, Ingram, and him all on the field. And it made a huge difference when these guys were out. A huge difference.
Also, Mac Jones, though, keep that in mind too.
Yeah, I don't really care. I mean, one thing I've learned is, like, if a guy does this as a rookie, just don't make excuses. Don't say, well, it was because of this. It happened. It means he's awesome. So, yeah, top 10 wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr., yes or no?
Yes.
If Rashee Rice is good to go, no suspension, no injury, no.
Are you serious? You would draft Rashee Rice over Brian Thomas Jr.?
Yep.
I'm drafting Xavier Worthy over Rashee Rice right now.
Dave Richard. No, I don't agree.
Why? Short area target in Kansas City's offense when they can't run the ball and they figure to be in competitive games.
Don't know that they can't run the ball, first of all.
Did you watch Brian Thomas last year?
Brian Thomas Jr. is like a legend.
He was a legend. He was the only guy being a legend for Jacksonville. They just got another legend.
I'm sorry. Did Xavier Worthy get traded?
Xavier Worthy was awesome in his last 3 games too. That's going to be another crowded offense.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So again, let me see if I can.
Marquise Brown's there for a full season too.
What happens to veteran pass catchers when they are paired with good rookies? Again, I mean, I just found a lot of like Justin Jefferson wasn't hurt by Jordan Addison, right? Now, I'll give you a guy who was hurt. Adam Thielen was hurt by Justin Jefferson. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins was affected by no, not really. He wasn't actually. He averaged more targets per game. T. Higgins averaged more targets per game in his second year with Chase than he did in his first year in just the games that Burrow played. Let's talk. Okay, Devontae Smith. No, we didn't really have, because they traded for AJ Brown the same year they got Devontae Smith, right? So we don't have that. Like I said, I found it like the players that are affected are the not so great players. Great players are not really affected. Cooper Kupp was kind of hard to tell, but Nico Collins had a breakout season, and Tank Dell had an amazing season. So really, I think the most likely scenario is that Trevor Lawrence just gets better. And also, you don't have Evan Ingram taking all these targets, and you don't have Christian Kirk taking all these targets. So I don't really see.
It's awesome. I'm not saying get rid of Brian Thomas Jr. and call him a middle of the pack number 2 wide receiver.
Well, Thomas wants it.
Well, now that you're bringing up Brian Thomas Jr., he broke out with Mac Jones. not with Trevor Lawrence.
He broke out
started-
with Mac Jones.
So what? That
He's
doesn't matter.
averaging almost 12 targets per game after the bye. And he was getting monster PPR points. There's no question about any of this. If
Yeah.
you tell me right now he's going to get 12 targets per game, he should be like the number
No.
3 or 4 fantasy.
Who would tell you that? I'm not telling you that he's getting.
But your case for Brian Thomas Jr. to be a top 5 wide receiver or wherever you're putting him is that he's just going to keep on doing what he did at the end of last year.
No.
And that's
At
not
the end of last year, no. At the end of last year, he was on pace for 1,800 yards and 17 touchdowns.
yeah.
it's gonna
There's no
be-
chance that's ever happening.
Of course, I'm not drafting. Otherwise, he'd be the first pick in the draft.
Right.
But I definitely think he could be a first round pick kind of player. And I don't know, putting him in the Rashee Rice range or that surprises me.
Rashee
Yeah,
Rice is averaging over 21 PPR points per game. He had 9.7 targets per game in his first 3 games. That guy needs to come back. And I don't think he gets 9.7 targets per game either because of Jamie was talking about it, Xavier Worthy. And Worthy will have a bigger role. And Kelsey's still there too. All these awesome offenses, man. Too many good receivers. Too many questions elsewhere about him.
By the way, Rashee Rice, they added Xavier Worthy. They added Marquise Brown. Now, Marquise Brown got hurt. And you know what he did? He just picked up where he left off, right? Because when a rookie wide receiver is that good, they usually aren't deterred. But Brian Thomas Jr. was so much better than Rashee Rice was. So I don't think Travis Hunter.
Imagine what Rashee Rice would do if he had 12 targets per game.
Not as much as Brian Thomas.
Not as much as Brian Thomas.
Not as much as Brian Thomas, but it would still be very good.
It's irrelevant though. But all right, so Jamie,
All
you
of
think
it's irrelevant because we're talking about receivers that are going to get plenty of good target volume from week to week. I don't know if any of them are going to be in the double-digit target per game range.
all right. Okay, let's go to let's talk about the quarterbacks. Cam Ward, first overall to Tennessee. Jaxson Dart, 25th.
Almost like we forget about that.
What'd you say?
It's almost like we forget about that. Where was the first pick? Like
I know.
it feels like it was like a year ago.
What's your fantasy take on that for Tennessee?
I mean, we haven't talked about this because it happened since our last show, but they did sign Tyler Lockett, so they did bring in somebody else who's got at least some veteran chops to help this receiving core, which definitely needs something. I hope they're not done by any stretch, but adding Lockett to hopefully at least be an upgrade on what he said on Fortnite that Treylon Burks is his 4th favorite receiver of all time. Cam Ward did. So they need to add some weapons still. It's not a bad starting point, with Calvin Ridley and Lockett and Chig, but it's not great. So he doesn't have the weapons. I still think he's definitely a questionable number 1 overall pick. I still think he's a questionable prospect coming into the league. We've heard differing opinions. Would he even be a first round pick last year? I think Ryan Wilson said that he was he would have been his 3rd favorite quarterback ahead of Drake May. So, people are all sort of somewhat all over the map with the evaluation of Cam Ward. So, I mean, I think he's easily a number 2 fantasy quarterback. He doesn't have the same upside as what we thought, what I thought for Caleb Williams and Jane Daniels, because he doesn't run to the same level of what Daniels did coming into the league. And I think he'll be a little bit questionable like Caleb Williams was in terms of how he plays. So number 2 quarterback, chance to be a, top 12 guy for sure as the season progresses, but he just doesn't have the weapons yet right now. So if they can, somehow find a way to get another receiver in the building, I actually was hoping that this was a Keenan Allen destination. Maybe it still can be, but he needs help. He needs help to be a better fantasy quarterback.
And we already knew, we've been talking about Calvin Ridley, who, we're anticipating that it was going to be Cam Ward for a while now. Who do you draft first, Calvin Ridley or Tony Pollard?
I have Pollard over Ridley as of now.
I would probably take Pollard, but it would depend on my build.
You're like slender.
I knew you were going to go there. Yeah.
All right, I think that's it. And then we don't have to talk about Jaxson Dart. We'll talk. There's plenty of time for dynasty talk. I guess you can give a quick dynasty take. Is Jaxson Dart, as of right now, going to be a top 12 pick in a Superflex dynasty rookie only draft?
Yes.
He might be like 10th, 9th.
Running backs, Jeanty, 6th overall to the Raiders. Jamie says he's RB4 for him. Behind who?
Behind Bijan, Gibbs, and Barkley in that order.
Dave, your thoughts?
I worry about whether or not Jeanty can get to 20 PPR points per game. If I think he can, and I see enough out there where you can think it through. Does he get enough catches? Does he get 3+ catches a week? Does he score enough? Those are the things that hold me back. Marinating him versus Kyron Williams and Christian McCaffrey. I think it's probably going to be more fun to take Jeanty over those guys, though. So
before the draft, my fourth running back was Achane, and I mean, he was amazing when Tua was healthy last year. So take that into account. Forget about the non-Tua games. So hopefully Tua's healthy for a full season. But I mean, what this kid has the potential to do with such limited competition, a better quarterback, a better play caller. The offensive line, I think, is going to surprise people if it didn't already last year, because it's one of the better offensive lines in the league, top half at least. Yeah, I think you couldn't have asked for better landing spot. I know I said Bears was my favorite destination. This was one of the top 3. So very excited to see him performing for Las Vegas next year.
We talked about Hampton, and Hampton, I think Jamie said he'd take him in round 5. Dave, you were around the same range with Hampton, right?
Early round 5.
Would you take Omarion Hampton or Alvin Kamara at this point?
Kamara if it's PPR, Hampton if it's non.
Yep.
James Conner or Hampton at this point?
I put him right behind Conner, so they're close.
Yeah.
I want to see what the rest of the Cardinals draft looks like, but and I don't think you'll get this from Harbaugh, but if the reporting out of Chargers camp is Hampton's taking a lot of first team reps and looking like he's going to be the lead guy, then I'll lean toward the younger player.
All right, let's go to the wide receivers. Travis Hunter, 2nd overall to the Jaguars. He had over 1,200 yards in 13 games last year, 96 catches for Colorado. So you have him ranked right now, Jamie? Where do you have Travis Hunter?
He's right around 37, 38.
And Dave, you have him ranked?
Late round 6, early round 7.
You said 27, 28 or 37, 38?
37.
Okay. He's just
sounds like I'm higher.
So when you rank Travis Hunter outside your top 36, are you doing that because you're worried about snap count?
There's a lot of good wide receivers. It's hard to get him much higher than that for me. So he's in the range right now, and I'm excited about the 49ers guys, excited about Odunze. The 2 Steelers guys are in that range. So I know 37 is typically, we say, outside the top 3 wide receivers, but I think he's a solid number 3 fantasy receiver.
Man, I wish I were a Jaguars fan. It would be so fun to be a Jaguars fan right now. Just the anticipation.
Once upon a time, we had a colleague who was a Giants fan that went to a Giants-Jaguars game, had a little too much to drink, and said before his night was over, "Go Jaguars."
He said, "Go Jaguars," before he ran at full sprint down a hotel hallway and pulled a hamstring while doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no idea. This, by the way, is not me. I have absolutely no idea who they're talking about, but that's very funny. Okay, Carolina taking Tet McMillan, 8th overall. I mentioned that Deontay Johnson was good in this offense last year very briefly with Andy Dalton. Adam Thielen was good in his last 7 games after returning from injury. One thing that I should mention is that Bryce Young, he played 10 games after he came back from being benched. And people were like, oh, yeah, he played pretty well. He may have, but his stats were not good at all. He averaged 6.6 yards per attempt. That is bleh. But, it's got better, clearly, and could take another step. Okay, Dave, your thoughts on McMillan real quick.
Quality number 3 receiver in PPR. I think he'll get the volume that we like. For now, he's 1 notch ahead of Hunter. I've got both those guys ahead of Zay Flowers, Calvin Ridley, the 49ers guys, Jacoby Myers. Things will change tomorrow. But for now, I've got those guys back to back.
Emeka
I think
Egbuka.
I'm going to end up being bullish on both those guys, but Hunter specifically. And that's probably part of the reason why I'm not as gaga for BTJ as you guys are.
I think, Dave, you should just move Trevor Lawrence all the way up. Just
He's going to get picked. He's going to be a late round pick.
Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams?
Caleb Williams.
Caleb, but the value for Trevor will probably be better.
I don't remember the stat off the top of my head. Caleb Williams has had the most rushing yards for a quarterback without a rushing touchdown since, I believe, RG3 in 2011 or something like that. Pretty crazy. All right. Is Emeka Egbuka even worth drafting in a redraft league? Egbuka, 19th overall pick to the Bucks.
One of your last picks. Now, I say this as somebody who was drafting Jalen McMillan, one of my last picks too. So I just like the offense, and I think one of the best GMs in the NFL that does not get enough credit is Jason Light. Like what he's done with different iterations of this franchise the last 7-8 years, Brady to Baker to, taking shots on guys clearly, and drafting amazingly. It's clearly more of an eye toward the future, but I mean, think about it. Godwin's coming off a pretty serious ankle injury. Both guys missed at least 4 games last year in Evans and Godwin. Jalen McMillan missed time last year too before he took off at the end of the season. So who knows how the beginning starts? Like Light addressed the media after. I don't know how much you guys paid attention to some of the post-draft comments, but like Dable saying Russell Wilson's our starter. Jason Light, I think it was Jason Light. I don't think it was Todd Bowles, but Jason Light said this was not a pick because we're concerned about Godwin. So
good. Okay.
Still something to keep an eye on, though. I mean, we spent a lot of time in one of our shows this offseason, relates to Rashee Rice too. Like these guys that are coming off pretty significant injuries, like how much do you buy back into them being the same right away? Godwin showed us once upon a time, right? He was pretty problematic off an injury.
No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next up. No, that's that Sonic commercial.
I know, but that's usually what I do.
I took the actual soundbite. Matthew Golden, 23rd overall. We have talked about this. All right, Dave, where do you have Golden right now in your rankings?
He's going to be like double-digit round pick, maybe round 10. As of now, I'll take him over Egbuka, but I why am I drafting them? Am I really going to draft them and hold on to them for like the first half of the season and just see what happens? Or am I going to draft them and after 3 weeks, they're not doing much of anything? I'm going to cut them. At least with Golden, there's a much easier path for him to not only play, but get a lot of targets, maybe even lead the Packers in targets. That might be 6.7 targets, but it'll be there. So I'm not overly excited in redraft for these guys. I will take Egbuka over Golden in Dynasty.
I don't put Golden and Egbuka in the same category for 2025.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
Golden could easily be the best receiver on his team.
My next question is: he the first Packers wide receiver you're drafting, Matthew?
No,
Golden?
I would still take Jaden Reed first, but I would take him second. I think he's going to be more talented than Romeo Doubs, who we know has been touchdown dependent. Dontavian Wicks has had a hard time catching the ball. Christian Watson obviously is not ready to play. So I think if you look at Reed and what he at least did 2 years ago, knowing that he's entering his 3rd season, hopefully that he'll be, getting an opportunity to get some maybe bigger target share without Watson there. To me, he's a little bit safer. But I think he's a loser, in following draft night, just based on the addition of Gold. So like for me, Golden's like right around wide receiver 50. That's kind of basically where I had Romeo Doubs before the draft.
I have this soundbite here that says Dan loves Jamie. I don't know what it is. I think I know what it is. Let's find out.
What I think about, and Jamie broke this down well, I thought really well, was
really well. I knew it was that. Okay. Dynasty. Give me a quick Dynasty take on these wide receivers.
Egbuka's going to eventually be a high volume, quality receiver, potentially a number 1 receiver for Tampa.
Well, why don't we just rank him?
Potentially be the number 1 receiver for Green Bay.
Let's just rank them for Dynasty. Travis Hunter 1.
Yes.
Right now, yes.
McMillan 2.
Yep.
And then what? Dave said Egbuka over Golden.
I would go Golden over Egbuka just with the concern that if Evans doesn't leave and Godwin now has his contract and Jalen McMillan is still on his rookie deal, like we could be in another crowded situation, whereas the Packers easily move on from Wicks and Dobbs after the season, I think. And Watson is never good again because of his knee.
All right, let's go to the tight ends here. How realistic is it that a day 2 tight end will end up higher in your rankings this year for 2025 than Colston Loveland to the Bears and Tyler Warren to the Colts?
That's a good question. So like Fannin would probably be the one where he'd end up on a team where he could be number 2 and he goes to the Jets or the Patriots.
It wouldn't be those two teams. It would be Mason Taylor going to the Chargers. I mean, the Jets situation is the quarterback situation is just the same as the Bears and the Colts. Like Justin Fields throwing to those guys is just a little bit of a step above at least the Colts situation.
He's in the middle.
Could you say, though, that less target competition on the Jets?
Yes.
Than the Colts?
But it's also less passing on the Jets. So
not than the Colts, though.
Yeah, I think I'd probably
But to your question though, like taking that guy on the Jets over those two guys, not for me.
The Cowboys, the Chargers, getting these guys, I
don't even think the Cowboys. I mean, I think Jake Ferguson's still good enough that he's going to command targets compared to a day 2 tight end.
Yeah, I'm going to be different because I love Tyler Warren. I could see myself just making Tyler Warren my top tight end no matter what. I could see myself putting Fannin ahead of Loveland. I don't love the idea of it, but I could see it happening. I wouldn't do it for Dynasty, but there are places where these tight ends could go where, thrust right into decent playing time. Sure.
Yeah, no one's moving Loveland from the top spot for me.
Houston's interesting. Houston has the second pick of day 2. The Browns have 2 picks in the top 4. We don't want to see that. Titans, Raiders, no. Patriots. You said no to the Patriots. Is that because they still have Hunter Henry and they still have Hooper, right? They used him a lot. But so that you don't want the Patriots you don't think that'd be a good spot for like a Harold Fannin or a Arroyo or somebody like that, Jamie?
I don't disagree. I think, again, it's more long-term than short-term, but to move those guys from the top spots, no. I don't think those move the needle. I think it's Chargers, for sure. If they go out and get somebody, just knowing what their room looks like right now with Tyler Conklin and Will Dissly. Maybe the Seahawks, just looking at Noah Fant and the receiving core there so they can have somebody run a little bit more 12 personnel. Trying to think any other teams.
Rams?
Maybe. I mean, Tyler Higbee was actually really good when he came back week 16 on in the playoffs. Like, he had scored 3 touchdowns. He had 3 games with 10 PPR points or more. I was actually pretty surprised. I know he's 32, but again, long-term, yes. But short-term, to move those guys, no. Like, for me, it's really just, it's got to be a Fannin, a Taylor, someone that's got a chance to be a playmaking tight end, a receiving option right away, and take the starter off the field or immediately be the starter right away.
All right, you're doing a dynasty draft. Pick a tight end, Loveland or Warren?
Warren.
Loveland.
Are you drafting that tight end ahead of Travis Hunter or Tetairoa McMillan?
No.
Definitely not Hunter. Probably not McMillan.
And what about the others? What about Egbuka and Golden? Egbuka to the Bucks, Golden to the Packers.
Yeah, I think it would
need.
What's that?
It would probably be need for my team. So if I need a tight end desperately, then easily. If my receiving core is good, then probably. If I'm looking at just best player available, I'd probably still lean receiver.
I think I'll take Warren over those receivers in a best player available situation. I think I'd take the receivers over Loveland in a best player available situation.
My bad. Let's do a super flex dynasty mock draft right now. Jamie, you're on the clock.
Let's see.
You can only take people who were selected today. All right, smartass. You get Jeanty. Dave, you're on the clock.
Hampton.
Cam Ward.
Am I picking 4th or 1st?
Oh, yeah. We'll snake it. I'll take Cam Ward and...
Well, no. We got to do it.
Oh, you have 4th pick then. Go ahead. You have the 4th pick.
So I'll take Hunter.
I'll take Warren. No, McMillan is still there, right?
Yeah, but I'll take Hampton. If you want to take McMillan?
No, I took Hampton at 2. This is a
Oh.
great exercise.
Sorry.
It's 1 in the morning on the Eastern Seaboard, and we're doing a Superflex mock draft of 8 players.
Man. All right, I'll take Will Campbell. Let's just finish by talking about the offensive lineman. Do you think the offensive linemen matter? Will Campbell to the Patriots. He's probably going to play left tackle. He has short arms, but they're hoping he's going to be their left tackle. Armand Membu to the Jets, 7th overall. He's a right tackle. And they might have a solid offensive line if Membu's good. Kelvin Banks to the Saints at 9. He played left tackle for Texas, but they have a left tackle in Talise Fuaga, so I'm guessing they're going to move Banks to right tackle. Tyler Booker to the Cowboys. He's a guard, 12th overall. Gray Zabel to the Seahawks, 18th overall. Pete Prisco says Zabel can play anywhere on the offensive line. I think he's considered, though, a interior lineman.
One of the best linemen, one of the best players, period, at the Senior Bowl.
Donovan Jackson to Minnesota. He's an interior offensive lineman. Looks like he'll play guard. He went 24th overall. The Commanders took tackle Josh Connerly, 29th overall. And a really interesting pick, the Chiefs take Josh Simmons, 32nd overall.
Yep.
He missed the season, right? He missed the entire season?
I believe he got hurt in season.
Okay, sorry about that. Pete Prisco says he's the best offensive tackle in this class when he's healthy. He tore his patella. So the Chiefs take a high upside gamble on an offensive tackle, Josh Simmons. They need offensive line help, so hopefully he can be back early. Okay. Any thoughts, guys?
They'll all be great.
Great. I will say that every year I look at where the PFF grades are for all of the first round picks, and they're usually pretty low. First round rookie picks, they are rarely really good. So I would not look at these guys and be like, ho, huge upgrade on the offensive line. It takes time usually for offensive linemen. That's just based on one metric. That's PFF grades, but that's pretty much all I've got for you. Okay. We will talk to you tomorrow after day 2. Thank you all very much for watching and listening. Get some sleep.